Hey everyone, and welcome to Sports Scene. I'm Chaz Messman.
I'm Ava Brand.
I'm Will Camardella.
And I'm Hayes Flanagan. What week is it? Well, you guessed it. It's Rivalry Week. The Trojans will head to the Rose Bowl on Saturday, where they will face off against number 16 UCLA Bruins. Now we head to the Rose Bowl, where our reporter Sara Atashi is there live. Sara, what can you tell us?
Thanks, Hayes. I'm here at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, where the number 7 Trojans will take back the victory bell from the number 16 UCLA on Saturday. In the top 20 matchup, the Trojans will define their season for better or for worse. The Crosstown Showdown first began in 1929 when the Trojans rolled over the Bruins 79-0. The rivalry is one of the most famous in college sports, with only 11 miles separating the two campuses. The winner of the rivalry each year not only earns LA's love, but also the notorious victory bell. Although the rivalry started 93 years ago, each year brings new traditions, pranks, and excitement. This year, the competition is more fierce than ever. This season, USC enters the weekend with the 49-33-7 record all-time against the Bruins, and some consider the Rose Bowl to be the Trojans' second home. In USC's 34 Rose Bowl games, the Trojans have the most wins of any team in the country, with 25 compared to UCLA's 5. So with the Pac-12 and potentially the playoffs on the line, this game will be a make it or break it for the Trojans. For Sports Scene, I'm Sara Atashi, live from Pasadena. Now back to the studio.
USC comes in at number 7 in the latest CFP Top 25. It's the Trojans' highest ranking in program history under the current playoff format. There is no change in the top 5, but USC got help from some Pac-12 rivals to move up a spot. Oregon falls 6 spots to number 12 after a home loss to Washington. And UCLA falls after suffering a major upset to Arizona at the Rose Bowl. There are 6 Pac-12 teams in the top 25, the most of any conference, with Utah at 10, Washington at 17, and Oregon State at 23. USC will round out its season against number 16 UCLA, number 18 Notre Dame, and potentially a ranked opponent in the Pac-12 title game. If they win out, guys, will it be enough to pass the likes of TCU, LSU, and Tennessee to get that number 4 spot in the playoffs?
I'll tell you what, they should be ahead of LSU right now. LSU is at 6, USC is at 7, but I think we're 10 games into this thing now, and you have to respect the fact that USC has only lost 1 game. LSU has lost 2. They got their doors blown off at home by Tennessee, played like garbage against Florida State, tried to give that game away 100 different times, and they wound up doing that. I know they had a good win at Alabama, but at the end of the day, USC's loss is by 1 point. They played right with Utah in a tough road environment. They just have the better resume.
Well, it comes down to Pac-12 versus SEC. You're always going to take that competition differently, and I think that loss to Utah really hit hard for USC. Utah's obviously a great team, and we've seen them play well with Cam Rising.
They're number 10 now.
Yeah, exactly, but it's hard. The SEC is just a different environment. You're playing different teams. You're playing different sized guys, and it's just hard to rank USC in that top 4 given their competition.
So right now, that's fair. USC should be behind the likes of an LSU. However, if USC wins out, getting those big wins that Ava mentioned earlier, there's no reason that they should be left out of the playoff. In fact, if they get left out as a 1-loss Power 5 conference champion, the committee loses all credibility. Tennessee, I'm sorry, yes, they've had a great season. Big win against Alabama, beat LSU. However, you lost to Georgia. I'm sorry, Georgia's in the college football playoff. You should not be there. Same thing with Ohio State, Michigan. Winner of that game eliminates the other.
I agree, but that's a little hard sometimes because you're like, these two are going to play each other, the Ohio State, the Michigan, not lost all season.
Georgia and Tennessee did. They lost. I'm sorry. And unfortunately, yes, Georgia's been so dominant. If they lose to LSU in the SEC championship game, they shouldn't go to the playoff. I'm sorry. You lost. You played that team.
Do you think LSU should go to the championship game then?
Oh, if LSU wins the SEC, yes, they're going in. They're going to be the first 2-loss playoff team you ever see.
Here's...
Well, we are going to talk about the top 5 rivalry games in college football, with it being Rivalry Week, the Crosstown Showdown, USC and UCLA. Sam, what is our number 5 rivalry?
Well, you saw rolling right there, the world's largest cocktail party every year in Jacksonville, Florida. Neutral site rivalry, those never really get me going, but it's decided the SEC East every year since 2015. It's an important game in the national title and SEC championship pictures. Has to be on this list.
Why don't you send us through number 4?
As an Oklahoma State fan myself, nothing gets those juices flowing like Bedlam. Lives up to the name every single year. Since 2014, it's been a ranked game in all but 2. Those 2 games, a missed 2-point conversion in the final minute decided the game. The other one, the Tyreek Hill punt return game. How could any of us forget that one? One of the best games every year. And here we have a season ago. Spencer Sanders cutting that deficit down to 3. This game was one of the games of the year. Both teams still in the playoff hunt. Both teams still in the Big 12 title picture. This game and this sack sent the Pokes on to Dallas.
And it sent Lincoln Riley to USC in a lot of respects as well. That was Caleb Williams getting sacked. He's going to have a star play in this rivalry game. It's Oklahoma. Again, it's the Red River Shootout, Texas and Oklahoma. It's a neutral site, but it's one of the best neutral site games you could ever possibly find. The Cotton Bowl filled half with orange, half with red. Oklahoma, Texas. Even when these two teams aren't good, they live up to the hype year after year after year. Last year was a perfect example of that.
Here we have last season, Caleb Williams' first snap as a Sooner led them all the way back from down 21-7 to get them in the playoff picture. Just to lose that Bedlam game earlier, might throw that one in there.
But a special athlete making a special play, and it helped rise his national fame very quickly.
Coming in at number 2, perhaps the most heated rivalry in all of college football, we have the Iron Bowl. This game has decided the fate of the SEC West time and time again. These Auburn teams seem to be the only one that can routinely crack a Nick Saban-led Alabama team. You think about some of the great moments in this game. We had an overtime thriller just a season ago, and of course, as we're about to roll, the kick 6.
Yeah, probably one of the best plays in college football history. It is right up there, a top 4 matchup, the SEC West on the line, and Auburn took the kickoff with no time left, 109 yards to the house. They would go on to make an appearance in the national title game. That has been the implications of this rivalry game year after year. And finally, at number 1, it's the game, Big Ten's best game, Ohio State and Michigan. Every single year, even when Ohio State dominates, the game means so much for the Big Ten East. These teams don't like each other. They got in a fight in the locker room and halftime a season ago. And there have been many great moments in this rivalry. Let's take a look at one from 2016.
And we've got the spot here. Everyone still argues to this day. My dad picked Michigan to win this game to make the playoff. He still is in my ear every year when these two teams meet that he swears JT Barrett got that first down.
And one play later to the house to finish things off. Ohio State would go to the playoff that year in an overtime thriller. Those are our top 5 rivalry games. Can UCLA and USC start to rise up the rankings with an excellent matchup this year? Let's send it back to the desk for more on that game.
Well, maybe so, because it's getting hot in here because Pac-12 football is heating up. Let's look back at this past weekend to get a little recap.
We made more mistakes at the end of the game that hurt us. This game 100% falls on me. Right, the onside, that was my decision, and it, the guy moved a little bit where it wasn't there when we thought it was there earlier. In prep, 4th down, you fall and slip, and it's going to be hard to convert in that situation.
Well, let's head to Eugene to talk Ducks versus Huskies as the number 6 Oregon Ducks fell in a 34-37 loss to Washington. Not only did Washington snap Oregon's 8-game winning streak, but they dwindled the Ducks' chance at going to the college football playoffs. Oregon's coach Dan Lanning will try to bounce back this weekend against Utah with a win.
Last Saturday, the Arizona Wildcats upset the UCLA Bruins at the Rose Bowl 34-28. This was the second loss of the season for UCLA, bringing their record to 8-2.
Look at that, we didn't make enough plays to win a football game. That's how we look at it. We don't, we're going to face 2 really good football teams coming in. So you never know in this league. I think you got to come to play every single game in this league.
Arizona took the lead in the 4th quarter when quarterback Jaden DeLora hit Tateroa McMillan for a 17-yard touchdown. The Bruins fell short of a comeback when Dorian Thompson-Robinson failed to connect with Jake Bobo as time expired. The UCLA defense struggled to contain Arizona quarterback Jaden DeLora, who threw for 315 yards and 3 touchdowns. Zach Charbonnet was once again excellent for UCLA, running for 181 yards and 3 scores.
Now let's take a trip to Utah, where Cam Rising and the Utah Utes put a beat down on Stanford, winning 42-7 and advancing to 6-1 in Pac-12 play. Utah's offense was looking nothing short of dynamic. The Utes running back Tavion Thomas was the star of the game with 180 yards, 22 carries, and 2 touchdowns. This past weekend was just a warm-up for Utah as they look ahead to a big Pac-12 matchup against Oregon. Right now, the two teams are tied for second in the Pac-12 with a 6-1 record and are looking ahead to a potential spot in the Pac-12 game.
All right, so the Wild West struck again once again last weekend, with USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, and Utah all still alive for the Pac-12 championship. How do you see this playing out? Because it could go anywhere.
Well, it's amazing. We just had a conversation about all the different teams that could find their way in the playoff, and Oregon is no longer on that list because of Dan Lanning. Congrats to him. He cost his team a football game in Eugene on Saturday night. They have 4th down and won at their own 34-yard line, and you're going for it? Are you kidding me? There's 1 minute and 20 seconds left. You punt it back, you play for overtime. Your defense is that bad that you can't get a stop in that sort of situation. It was a ridiculous decision. It was an embarrassing decision. He wanted to be the smartest guy in the room, and he cost him the game.
I would not count Oregon out, though. If they beat Utah, that's a big win. At Utah, I mean, that's a loud stadium. You're playing in a big environment, but I would not count Oregon out. I would not count Washington out. They are 5-2. I mean, that's still possible. You're looking at some losses, some random losses. You could sprinkle in Washington in there. I mean, it is anyone's fair game, and I think this USC-UCLA game has a lot riding on it in respect to USC and where they will end up.
USC controls its own destiny, which I think is key here. If they go and win at the Rose Bowl, they are in and have their ticket punched to Vegas. Not many other teams in the Pac-12 can say that right now, and I think that's the huge thing, that they can kind of play with a sort of confidence, knowing that they control their own destiny, getting some help from the Oregon and UCLA losses.
And best case for USC, Oregon loses to Utah at home. Utah goes to the Pac-12 championship game, and the Trojans have an opportunity to avenge that loss that they had up in Salt Lake City. But one last point I want to make here. We've seen the depth of the Pac-12. It's been ridiculed across college football for years. And this season, it is pretty fair to say that they are the deepest conference in all of college football.
Well, it was a very exciting weekend, but we have one more game to look back to, and that was last Friday night when the Trojans took care of business in a 55-17 drubbing of Colorado. The 38-point win was SC's second largest margin of victory this season as the team moves to 9-1. The game did not come without a serious price for the Trojans, however, as redshirt senior running back Travis Dye went down to an injury in the second quarter, and had to be carted off the field. Dye was the Trojans' leading rusher and had recording over 100 yards in 6 of his 8 full games, but Lincoln Riley says he is likely done for the season. Despite losing Dye, the Trojans put up their second highest point total of the season. The offense failed to find the end zone in the first 15 minutes, but scored on 8 of its final 9 drives after that. Quarterback Caleb Williams bounced back from his second interception of the season, tossing 3 touchdown passes, all in the second half, and scoring 2 more on the ground as well. Williams distributed the ball well, completing passes to 9 different teammates. Wideouts Brendan Rice and Taj Washington both hauled in long touchdown catches, and running backs Austin Jones and Raleek Brown both scored touchdowns after Dye went down while recording over 6 yards per carry. On the defensive side of the ball, the Trojans had their best performance in weeks. Their 17 points allowed was their fewest since October 8th against Washington State. When the offense was struggling to find its footing early, it was the defense that kept the game within reach. USC forced the Buffaloes to punt on its first 2 drives. One possession later, Tuli Pelotu and Tyrone Talani combined to sack quarterback Daichi Shrout for a safety. Tuli Pelotu had yet another huge performance for the Trojans, recording 2.5 sacks and forcing a fumble. Cornerback Kalen Bullock picked off Shrout in the third quarter, the 15th USC interception of the year. So after that resounding win, how much higher is your confidence with USC right now?
Colorado's quite literally one of the worst teams in college football, so not that much higher, but I think it's great for the USC Trojans to have that confidence in themselves. Only allowing 17 points, I think, is huge for this defense, especially going into a game where you're facing a very talented quarterback in DTR and a very talented running back in Zach Charbonnet. So I think that's huge for the defense and for the offense to get to kind of run up the score, Travis Dye, before he went down, and Lincoln Riley talked about that this team they feel is so close to being at that point where they are just separating themselves from teams. And I think this past Friday's game helped USC prove that, and we'll see what they can carry on to this weekend.
And it's definitely nice to get a longer weekend, Friday game, Saturday. It was kind of like a warm-up, except for Travis Dye, who obviously, unfortunately, is no longer warming up. But I think it was an awesome game to see USC kind of get in the groove. What I would love to see for once is their offense just come out strong. They've been really struggling to just come out, score on that first drive, assert some dominance, and I would love to see that at the Rose Bowl this weekend.
And that is a great point, especially when you play a running back like Zach Charbonnet, who's been so dominant all season. If UCLA gets a lead, it could be very tough for Caleb Williams and company to make a comeback.
I think it'll be interesting, too, on that point, to see if Eric Gentry can suit up and how many snaps he can play.
Well, the game's just an example of just how quickly this USC offense can turn it on, because you're right, they did not start well. The only points they had in the first quarter was on a defensive safety. They scored 55 in the game. And not every I know Colorado's bad. Not every offense in the country is able to do something like that. And the other reason you feel positive, yes, you lose Travis Dye, but Jordan Addison was out on the field playing. Only had one catch, but he was out there on a pitch count, showing that he will be ready to go. He's the most important receiver they have. It's a very important piece to get back for the UCLA game.
And they might be getting Mario Williams back, too, this weekend. Maybe on a snap count, but still he'll be back.
Definitely exciting times. The Rose Bowl is looking filled again, and that's how you know UCLA football is back this season. The once ranked number 9 Bruins now sit at number 16 in the country and 4 in the Pac-12. Although the Bruins are ranked below the Trojans, UCLA quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson did not hold back when talking about this weekend's game.
Yeah, this is my going on my 5th year here being with this rivalry. I obviously know it's at stake, trying to teach my younger teammates the tradition and everything that goes along into this game. Obviously, we hate those guys across town. There's a bitter feeling with those guys.
The Bruins started their season strong, winning 6 games in a row, but lost their first game in late October to a hungry Oregon team. Bouncing back from a big loss, the Bruins won 2 Pac-12 conference games in a row against Stanford and Arizona State. But the Bruins hit an unexpected bump in the road this past weekend when Arizona beat the Bruins at the Rose Bowl. The Bruins now sit at 8-2 and are hoping for a big win for a potential spot in the Pac-12 title game. All right, so the Bruins are ready to take down the highly talked about USC Trojans, and it sure will be a crosstown battle. What are we thinking? How's this game going to go? And does this come down to a DTR Caleb Williams matchup?
I basically think it does. My expectation for this game is points, and more points. Both of these defenses are in a bad way right now, and I know USC played a little better against Colorado, but I still don't trust the defense, especially with how dynamic these UCLA players are on the offensive side. And the question is this going to look a lot like the Utah game, where it might just come down to who has the ball last?
I agree with you there, Will. I think it will be an offensive shootout. Take the over. I'm not super into sports betting, but I would take the over on this weekend's game. I think we're going to see, Caleb's getting Mario Williams back, like we said before, and the defense could be getting Eric Gentry back. But on the other side of town, UCLA, Devin Kirkwood, their starting corner, is out, didn't practice today or yesterday. So that could be huge for USC's offense, but still, like we just heard from DTR, he is fired up and ready. It could be his last home game at the Rose Bowl as a UCLA Bruin. I don't think that he's going to allow this team to suffer 2 back-to-back home losses in a row.
And both of these teams are terrible matchups defensively for each other. When we talk about USC's defense, what have they struggled with all season? A running game. Zach Charbonnet is one of the best running backs in the country. But when you look at UCLA, what have they struggled with in their 2 losses? A mobile quarterback. And Caleb Williams is a massive upgrade on Jaden DeLora and Bo Nix. So this is, you mentioned the points, you could go either way. And a big thing that you mentioned, Eric Gentry and his health. If the Trojans can get back Gentry, that will be absolutely huge, because the best receiver on that UCLA team, Jake Bobo, has been absolutely spectacular this season, and is going to be a first-team Pac-12 player.
Well, it does help for USC that the Rose Bowl is kind of a neutral ground, you could say, as it is maybe even closer
There's
to
gonna be
USC
Tarps
than
up on
it
there,
is
too.
UCLA. I will say. So that is not something I don't think we will struggle with as we did in Utah. So I will say I got hope for USC in that environment.
And you can't talk about this game without talking about the Travis Dye situation. Obviously, it stinks to have him come down. Now, the interesting thing about the Dye injury, as it pertains to this game, is I didn't think Travis Dye was getting 25 carries anyway. But what Travis Dye does for you that's so important is the situational football. If you have a 3rd or a 4th and 1 where you're going to go for it, Travis Dye is as dependable as it gets. If you have a lead in the 4th quarter, Travis Dye is the guy who will help you run that clock down. The question is, can Raleek Brown and Austin Jones, and in particular Austin Jones, fill that same sort of role? I think he's the most important player in this game.
We will see. Lincoln Riley did say the run game will change without Travis Dye, obviously. We'll see how that takes form on Saturday. But today, our own Allie Anthony sat down with inside linebacker Raylan Goforth to discuss the meaning of this weekend's matchup.
Hey everyone, I am here with Raylan Goforth. Raylan is a senior inside linebacker for the Trojans. How are you doing this week, Raylan?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited for the opportunity this weekend.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a crazy game. You know this. You've been a Trojan since freshman year. You also grew up in Long Beach, so you kind of know what this rivalry between USC and UCLA looks like. How does the team's excitement this year compare to years in the past?
We're very excited. Brand new team, brand new guys here, so we're really excited for the opportunity to go out and showcase what this team is about.
And there's a lot riding on this game, you know that. How have you dealt with kind of the pressure surrounding this critical matchup?
Really, you just go about your day. Can't really change your routine. There's a lot of pressure, of course, on this game. You hear a lot of the outside noise, but the key component to it is you just got to be able to block out the noise and just focus on doing what you can individually to help the team be successful.
Considering that UCLA has a really dynamic quarterback in DTR, and they have a guy like Zach Charbonnet who can run the ball, what are you going to plan on doing to try to stop this offense?
Really just execution. That's what it comes down to with an offense like this that's, has high firepower, got a great quarterback that can make all the throws. You got a running back. I've been going against him since high school, and I actually trained with him this offseason, so I see how they attack their business and how they go about their business, Zach Charbonnet is a great running back. He's a good workhorse, can put the team on his back if need be, so with this offense, you have to be able to execute and do your job.
Yeah, and do you feel like, in a way, you kind of have the upper hand knowing how these guys play just from your past?
Yeah, DTR, he can hurt you with his legs, he can hurt you with his arm, and then, Zach is going to be Zach. So, definitely, I like being able to look back in the past and see what I have done against these guys. And hopefully moving forward, I look forward to the challenge this weekend.
Yeah, well, it's such an exciting time here at USC. I guess last question, what can we expect to see on Saturday from the Trojans? What kind of vengeance are you going to come out with?
You can expect to see a ball club that's really fired up and really motivated. No matter what the odds say, we consider ourselves to be, the hunter, not the hunted. So we got to come out with a great energy, and we have to come out and execute and play a complete football game.
Yeah, well, you heard it here first. The hunter, not the hunted. This is Raylan Goforth again. Thank you so much for coming in, Raylan.
Thank you.
Good luck on Saturday. We'll all be watching. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
The Trojans certainly understand this will be a tough matchup, but they are holding themselves to a high standard. That starts at the top with Heisman hopeful Caleb Williams, who's itching to keep improving. Coach Lincoln Riley has confidence his quarterback can do so and set this tone for the rest of the team.
Whether that's how I can lead better, how I can play better, not have, like we just talked about, the one interception, how I can my play fakes, how I can just overall be better as a player and as a leader.
Caleb's played in a lot of not only rivalry games but games with title implications, right? And those get different this time of year. I like where our guy's been and some of the battles he's been in, and I think it will help him play well.
Experience is definitely a good thing to have for USC this weekend. The Bruins are coming off an upset loss. And the last time the Trojans went on the road and faced a team in the same position, they suffered a 1-point defeat to Utah. Just a few more practices for USC to focus on stopping a dynamic UCLA offense and avoid its second road loss of the season. This weekend's game is significant for more than just taking back the victory bell for USC. Will, what do you have for us?
Well, with some of the stunning results we saw over the weekend, USC's path to the Pac-12 championship game is now fairly simple. With a win over their crosstown rival on Saturday, the Trojans punched their ticket to Vegas. The Oregon-Utah game on Saturday is the other critical game this weekend. Whoever prevails in Eugene will have the inside track to the other spot, assuming they win their final conference game in Week 13. If the winner takes a loss there, it could be the Washington Huskies who sneak in with 2 losses. So there's still a whole lot of uncertainty with 2 weeks to play, but who do you guys think the last 2 teams standing will be in the Conference of Champions?
You know, I really think it's going to be Oregon and USC. I think we're going to see that matchup in Vegas. I think that Oregon's going to be hungry going on the road to face that number 10 now Utah offense, Cam Rising. We saw what he can do. I think Bo Nix is going to lead this team back and bounce back and get that win in Utah, take care of business in Corvallis, and USC will win out.
Mark my words, USC Utah. We are seeing a rematch, and I am so excited. I think that Cam Rising will go to Utah or go to Oregon, or they're coming there. So I guess play so well in Utah. They're seeing Boulder. They'll roll over them, and they'll finish the season strong. And I'm going USC is going to win this weekend. Then hopefully Notre Dame, and then they'll see each other in Vegas.
I completely agree with you. I think USC's defense makes enough plays to get the job done against UCLA. And I think Oregon beats Utah. I think Utah beats them. And I think Oregon drops 2 more games this season. I think they're going to lose on the road in Corvallis.
Oh, wow. That's a bold one. But I am in agreement with the 2 of you. I also believe that Utah is going to win. Look, Bo Nix is a great quarterback. Do we know he's going to play in this game? I know he came in for the last series, but his status is still shaky. And Utah has flown under the radar basically all year because they dropped a game at the start of the season in Gainesville. They're a really good football team, but I think they take on somebody else in the final. I think UCLA wins on Saturday and sends the Pac-12 into utter chaos. That's my prediction. Well, Saturday night could be a game for the ages. That is all we've got for this week's special rivalry edition of Sports Scene. From everyone here at Annenberg Media, thank you so much for tuning in.